Hey there. Welcome to the pod. Even though the Blazers don't have anybody sniffing the All-Star game this year, we thought we'd talk about it a little bit, specifically some All-Star snubs. Riley, you're up first.
Well, it was pretty interesting to see what happened with our own Damian Lillard when he moved from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference, because throughout his time here in Portland, he was putting up huge numbers, probably bigger numbers than he is now, but he was playing in Portland instead of Milwaukee, and he was usually only saved and got into the All-Star game by coach's vote or some kind of, last-ditch effort to sneak him in. But he's a starter this year, and he's a starter over Jalen Brunson. And that's been a little bit controversial because, as good as Dame has been, obviously he's been really limited on the defensive end. He's playing pretty well offensively, but his numbers aren't quite what they were in Portland. And he's getting in over a guy who's, arguably putting his team on his back and dragging them into, pretty good playoff contention this year. So there were some interesting things that came out today about Jalen Brunson, some debate about whether his size, he can really be like the most important player on their team, which I thought was kind of a interesting way to frame it, considering what we've seen over the last few years with guys like Steph Curry and even Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard was undoubtedly the most important player on the Blazers, and he took them into the playoffs and even tried to make a push with very, very little help. He was undoubtedly our MVP. And if we had been able to put something together, he would have been, one of the best players on one of the best teams if we could have gotten him some help.
If, if,
Um,
if.
it's all ifs, but that's what we're seeing in New York, and that's kind of my point, is that they were able to get some other pieces around Jalen Brunson, and he's put together just a heck of a run this year. So anyway, if I'm gonna say there was a snub, I'm gonna say it was Jalen Brunson, and I'm even gonna say that he should have gotten in over our own Damian Lillard because he hasn't been a starter before. He should have been a starter in previous seasons. He's been a snub for years, as any Portland fan has been, decrying for a decade now. But this year, Jalen should have got in as a starter.
Crazy how Brunson beat Lillard in everything but the fan vote. Lillard had 2.2 million votes. Brunson had 1.4. Come on, New York, stand up for Jalen. But the media votes, 48 for Brunson, 9 for Dame. So media disagreed with the fans, and also player votes, 78 for Brunson to 61 for Dame. So that is probably the most controversial snub, I'd say.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Dame is having a good year and he's on a better team, and so it's not exactly surprising that he would be, finally getting a little bit more recognition. This is recognition he should have been getting for years. And I've been in love with Dame's game for longer than most of these people have even been watching him. Apparently, they've all gone to bed before he even hit the floor for the last 10 years. But now he's in the national spotlight more, and it just goes to show what a difference that makes, especially with the fan vote.
Yeah. I mean, but you said it. It's the fan vote. And the fans aren't always the most educated, but it's who the fans want to see. And it's interesting because we always used to have the opposite end of the argument when we were supporting Damian Lillard, kind of what you said. Oh, well, look at his numbers. Look at what he's doing. He's dragging a team with no help. Well, the fans speak and they vote who they want to see. Sometimes that is crazy, like when Andrew Wiggins was an all-star starter a couple of years ago, and they vote with big markets, right? Like you said, Kirby, New York, stand up. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go
come
a
on.
different. I'm gonna go a different way with my snub, and I'm gonna try to explain it as best I can. But who was the guy when Damian Lillard was not starting? Who was the guy that was taking his spot in the All-Star game as a starter when he was on Portland?
Splash, bro.
Steph. And there's a reason for that. You can argue all you want. Steph is one of the top two or three most exciting players in the league. No matter what, when he's going, he's the most exciting. And there's a reason why he was the starter all those years. And it's because tailor-made for an all-star game.
True.
Damian Lillard is far more of an exciting player to watch in an all-star game than Jalen Brunson, in my opinion. And I think that's the opinion of a lot of people. Who's been the guy that's ended the all-star game on buzzer beaters the last couple years? Dame, from deep, from half court. And I think this is going to sound crazy because you're going to say, who are you going to bench for him? Colton? I know that's Riley's question or Kirby's question.
Whoa.
I think Curry should be starting in the
Who are you
all-star.
gonna bench for him, Colton?
So, okay, everybody loves SGA. I'm not an SGA hater. However, in the All-Star game, do I want to see the guy driving to the rim, snapping his head back, shooting mid-range shots in the All-Star game? No, I don't. I want to see the guy bombing 35 footers. And I just think that Steph is so entertaining to watch. That's who I think is kind of a snub. You know, he's still putting up big numbers, maybe not SGA numbers. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. Put the most exciting players in the All-Star game as the starters. The other guys fill in on the bench. It reminds me of when LaMarcus Aldridge was in the All-Star game. That's kind of like the SGA game style, in my opinion, where he
Post game, mid
he's
range.
skilled, but does his game suit the All-Star game as much as like Blake Griffin did at the time? No. So that's my thoughts on it.
It's wild. SGA got so many fan votes. That kind of surprises me. I guess that might be a sign of like that the fans understand he deserves it a little bit. But he had 3.1 million. Steph had 3.2, so he barely beat him out.
He
Steph barely beat
deserves
out.
it. He deserves to be a starter. I'm just saying excitement wise, I think
Yeah.
Steph is more exciting. So
I think another example of what you're describing is that I think Giannis is boring as hell to watch in the All-Star game the last few years. Like
Yeah.
a couple years ago he scored like 70 or whatever, but it was just there's no defense in the All-Star game, and when all that he does is just they just dump it to him down low and he just like puts the ball in like over and over and over. Didn't he like break a record for individual scoring in an All-Star game, and it was just the most boring scoring you can possibly imagine. Like I wanted someone to finally play some defense just because it was so dull to watch him do that. I don't really care if people don't play defense when guys are bombing from half court, honestly, or doing lob dunks and stuff like that. But just the like weird post play, like camping out down in the lane and then putting the ball in through the rim, that's not what anybody wants to see in an all-star game. So
Riley
not
has
to
become a stark Giannis hater. I wonder what happened that made him feel that way.
he stole my
I
man.
actually agree with you, Colton. I think that it should be the most entertaining players and the fans vote them in, but I'm in the position where I have to argue the other side that maybe the most deserving players should go in and be the all-stars, the players who have contributed the most success to their team. And there's a few guys that spring to mind right off the bat. Anthony Edwards, because he's had his team's had such a good year and he's been the driving force behind it. And also Kawhi Leonard. Both of those guys, especially Kawhi Leonard, kind of boring for an all-star game. Um, but I think his team certainly has had a lot better year, even though they're stacked. There's a lot of former all-stars on the Clippers. Um, but does he deserve to go in over LeBron? I know that's a crazy controversial thing. I might get killed for it, but LeBron's team not doing so well. Barely over 500, been
neither is
struggling.
Steph's.
What'd you say?
Neither is Steph's. His team's
Yeah.
doing worse than LeBron's.
Yeah, they're both of those teams struggling to breach the 500 mark this season. LeBron's stats have definitely dipped the last couple years. He's, takes games off as Kawhi. I mean, Kawhi's the king of load management, I guess. But yeah, both of those guys definitely spring to mind for all-star snubs. Although I will reiterate that LeBron is way more entertaining in the all-star game than either one of those guys. Just the attention that he brings, the allure, the fan engagement. People are going to be freaking out if he has a big dunk or an awesome play. So I think that they probably got the all-star starters right. It's crazy Steph isn't in it. It's wild to me that the fans voted SGA, like, kept him afloat with Steph. That surprised me, but I think that they got the starters right for the most part, and it should be an entertaining game to watch.
I would rather
Maybe.
see
Actually, I take that back. I don't know if it's going to be entertaining. All-Star games
the All-Star game.
definitely hit or miss with that.
I would rather see Steph and Anthony Edwards than Shea and Durant. Like if we're looking for guys to swap out, I mean obviously Durant's a, all-time great scorer in the league, but he's probably not going to play that many minutes for one thing. I mean, he seems like the kind of guy who's going to be like, "All right, I got 15 in the first quarter, take me out, coach. I don't want to
Yeah,
get hurt."
at least all these guys will get some court time. Like you said, they'll probably take out LeBron and Durant and the veterans and have them play limited minutes and let some of the younger guys shine.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it'll be interesting not because it's going to be a good game, but just to see who gets the time, who wants to sit, and I don't know, the pageantry around it is sometimes kind of interesting even if the game sucks.
Yep, let us know down in the comments if you thought anyone was snubbed, who you think's gonna win. If you like the East versus West coming back, I kind of like that. I think that that's a nice return to form. I think the the captain system, it was a fun experiment, but I think it kind of ran its course. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.